That's all. That's all. Seem like everything was essentially that's great.
Everybody there.
If I can't, I'll call the meeting to order, please. Please call roll.
Ms. Diane Arnold. Honorable Scott Bates. Here. Honorable John Black. Honorable Byron Chapman.
Here.
Honorable Jack Kaufman. Honorable Troy Eppington. Mr. Chris John Streets for the Honorable Jeff Gahan.
Here.
Honorable Nicole George for the Honorable Craig Greenberg.
Here.
Thank you. And thank you. This is Deputy Mayor George's first meeting. We'd like to welcome her today. Mr. Keith Griffey.
Here.
Mr. Albert Tubby Purcell for the Honorable Treva Hodges.
Here.
Honorable Maria Johnson. Honorable Tim Kamer. Honorable Dan Eisen.
Here.
Mr. Andy Krause for the Honorable Mike Moore. Honorable John Ogburn.
Here.
Honorable Carol Pike.
Here.
Mr. Kevin Beatty. Honorable Jerry Summers.
Here.
Honorable Rick Tanini.
Here.
Honorable Jim Travis. Honorable Scott Travis.
Here.
Honorable Kevin Nuss for the Honorable David Vogel.
Here.
We have a quorum, and I also want to welcome a couple of guests that we have in attendance from Leader McConnell's office. We have State Deputy Director Andrew Condia and State Director Robin Taylor. I'd like to welcome you all, and if you all have anything to share.
Sure, I'll be very brief. Rob and I are pleased to be here. I want to say, obviously, as many of you all have seen, Senator McConnell is back in the Senate. We're very happy about that. He's better than ever, so we're thrilled that he's back to work. And really, that was it. We just wanted, Rob and I wanted to come and say hello and listen in today. And if there are any questions, Robin will take the difficult ones. I'll take the softballs, and we'll just say thank you. We're happy to be here.
Well, welcome everybody. Delighted to hear the Senator's back to work. He's been a very good friend of my county, and his parents lived in my county, and it makes me feel good to know he loves Shelby County as I do. I also want to compliment the city of Louisville and the handling of the tragedy that occurred there recently. As a son of a former Louisville police officer, I know how traumatic something like this is. I remember my mother on the first time she went in a building, searching the building, the perpetrator told her, if I had a gun, I'd have killed you. Well, my mother wasn't a very brave person, and she told him, if you had a gun, you wouldn't have had to kill me. I'd have died of a heart attack. But Louisville, my compliments to the way you, the mayor, and all the citizens, and Carol, the tribute that you had out in J-Town. Thank you for that.
Thank you for recognizing that. It was a very moving visual. And as of last night, I wasn't going to do this, but I will read this to you all. You know, prayer works, and it doesn't matter how much money that Nick Wilt gets, because that's not going to bring back his health. if one could buy health, the rich would live and the poor would die. And last night at 9:05, I got this message from his mother. And she had not seen the video. So she sent me a note and she said, I've not seen the whole thing, but did see your speech. I cried with you. Love you so much. Thank you. He opened his eyes today when I said his name. The prayers and love from your vigil helped make that happen. So I thought that was very exciting that he at least has opened his eyes. So that's a big step forward, but thank you for recognizing that.
Thank you. You have before you the March board meeting minutes. Are there any additions, deletions, corrections, or other concerns with the minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve as submitted. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Today we have a guest speaker from the Kentucky League of Cities, Brianna Carroll. So there you are. I will say, Brianna, my stepson Matthew Niehaus said to give you all the way. Thank you for being here. Please present.
One of our speakers. Appreciate you all for having me today. JD not join us. We cross paths. He's in Northern Kentucky and tomorrow in Owensboro. So for other updates, it's actually the first time I think we've made it to a full board. Normally we're talking with the clerk, so we were excited to talk with you guys today. We had a successful session. It was probably one of the most challenging that we have experienced. It was my 19th session in Frankfurt, and I would say it was one of the most difficult. Some of you were with us in the trenches for some of the fights, so you know what I'm talking about. But KLC was able to pass 14 of our agenda items, so it ended up being very successful for local governments. We had some modernization changes for publications for some of the communities to be able to allow them to have some updates for online publishing. Still does not allow for everyone to be treated the same, which is definitely our goal. So we will continue to work on that. For entertainment destination centers, we wanted to be able to update those and allow for, so if you have a drink in your hand and you want to walk into a business, if they allow you to do so, you're able to do that. So that will hopefully help some of those areas that have. I know Bowling Green was very interested in it, and some of the other communities. We worked really hard on recovery housing legislation. It took up a large amount of time from before session until some of the last days. But that has definitely impacted all of our communities. Elizabethtown brought it to our attention last summer, where they were experiencing significant amount of homes that were being turned into recovery homes. And we realized that there are no standards. And so all this bill, what our goal was simply to make sure that we put standards in place for those recovery homes, minimum standards. Local governments have the ability to regulate now and put some standards in place at local level, but we didn't want a proliferation of models out there to where some communities who maybe did not have the expertise might be inundated with bad actors. And so this finally was able to pass, although it did at the very end of session pass with an amendment for a religious exemption. So that is there. And so we'll be monitoring it to see if there is an abuse on that exemption, but hopefully those who need the help and support will still be able to receive it without abuse from that. So we also the same one as we passed with the drug paraphernalia, fentanyl. Obviously, you all, it's out there, everyone's talking about it, but it is the testing strips were considered drug paraphernalia, And so we amended the statutes to exclude those from drug paraphernalia. And so we know that the dealers are creative and they will find a way to use their creativity in ways that they shouldn't. And so we didn't want them to then turn around and put the fentanyl or anything on the strips, wrap them up and sell them, which was some legislators' concern. So we ended up saying in the event that there is the sale, importation, or manufacturing of fentanyl, those strips are still considered drug paraphernalia. So if your law enforcement in your community has any encounters the drug or fentanyl test strips that with situations where it's importing, manufacturing, or trafficking, that is still considered drug paraphernalia. We had some updates on procurement laws where, so for cities with the residential bidder preference, we removed that requirement. So that's updating those statutes that have been on the books for a very long time. We knew some cities, Henderson, for instance, and some cities in this area had requested some updates. And also exempted community-based charitable organizations from the procurement bidding requirements. There were situations where some asked, what if we want to allow a charity to mow our grass for the city or county? What if we want to allow that to occur? Can we do that and get around the procurement process? We said, let's explore that. And that ended up passing this session too. So that should help. And then we had, like always, changes to retirement laws, and to help our employees. There were some requests from our firefighters and law enforcement officers last year to explore some options for when they retire, and we were able to finally pass an option for post retirement option for a lump sum option. And that just provides an option for a monthly payment with a small lump sum as well. And what everyone should like in local government for employees that I don't think many people realize was passing was that when employees retire, if they choose to return to work, still cannot have a second retirement, but across the board now it's only 30 days to return to work. So there was, some employees had to sit out 90 days, 30 days. It was confusing if you return to hazardous or non-hazardous. And I know if you took those calls, I was getting calls, especially if they were returning as an SRO. So included that in that legislation, and hopefully that clears that up. So for residential neighborhoods, we were able to help with appointing a receiver for those planned communities, and that legislation passed. Former Senator Alvarado tried passing that legislation for several years and it failed, but this year finally passed, and it allows the city to recover the cost of in areas where those communities have failed and there's the grass needs to be mowed, or any of the updates or maintenance and any of the renovations in those areas. The TIF legislation that with the reduction of the sales tax that some areas that had sales tax or TIFs, we finally were able to pass something that helps them, but it was only for a one-time short period, 1 year. So we'll have to go back and address that again next year. But that gives some relief for the tax increment financing for those areas. So we're going to have to go back. There was definitely a dispute on the formula proposal. Also, police officer contracts. If you have police officers in your area, there are school districts that have created police departments, and if they hire your police officer, they did not feel like they were included in the statutes that they would have to reimburse for hiring a police officer. We had that in some of our cities. We made sure that was clear that they are departments and they're wanting to hire a POP certified officer, they need to reimburse counties or cities, sheriffs, everyone for hiring those officers, coaching, and extend those contracts from 3 years to 5 years as well. Because those investments are being made from our tax dollars, and we want to make sure that our residents are getting that return for training. Also, in our cities and counties, making sure that the counties are able to divulge the tax information to those taxing jurisdictions when requesting for any of the auditing purposes. That was passed in Senate Bill 112. We had a request from one of our northern Kentucky cities, and so Senator McDaniel filed that for us and passed it. Senator Amanda Mays Bledsoe out of Lexington filed Senate Bill 141 for us, and it kind of turned into a larger bill that some of you may have heard of. It first started out as code enforcement, and it allows our cities to collect property taxes for any of the unpaid code enforcement liens on any of the bills. So it allows for regulating of the living standards and addressing any of the dangerous conditions, but allowing for those code enforcement liens to be placed on the bill. However, it then turned into the annexation bill, and which was proposed by KIPDA and some county officials originally as a 5-year moratorium. And we were able to finally, at the end of session, really in the last week, stop that from happening. And it ended up not being the full moratorium, but has a 1-year pause and for some, and it's created a task force. So we will be working throughout the interim through the task force recommendations are due in November. And we'll be working very closely on that. I know Keiko's working on that. It will have members of the House and the Senate to really examine the economic outlook of what annexation does. Obviously, the financial ramifications and how that works. But at the end of session, we were able to really communicate and stop the initial proposal from occurring. So that that ended up working out better. That did pass on to Senate Bill 141. Senate Bill 213 was our biosolids bill, which Senator Higdon called his shitty bill. And Kentucky was only one other state had higher standards in the federal government, which is not good, for permitting the land application of sewer sludge. So I learned a lot about sewer sludge over the last few months, but we were able to finally pass something working with the cabinet, and Senator Higdon was great on helping us pass this bill, and it helps a lot of our communities that have some problems with landfills. So that was a good bill. Also, some of you in the room know Judge Summers' House Bill 5, and I know Judge Eisen was working on this as well, the bourbon barrel tax. That bill was a disaster too. So that so we will continue having to work on this issue, because the bourbon, we call it corporate greed. Removing the bourbon barrel tax, as many of you know in the room, the bourbon industry made a lot of promises to our communities that our counties and cities, when they came in and promised occupational tax and investments of either whether it was, improvements on water or sewer or we're providing maintenance and any of the bonding that they need. They continue to obviously use the roads, they're leaving us with black mold, everything else that we're having to deal with. And I talked with someone the other day, it was funny, who's an attorney, and he said, I actually represented one of those bourbon companies and created the PowerPoint for them to go into one of those counties. And one of the big pushes was that tax. So like, yes, we're aware of that. But that ended up passing, and it was a phase out of the revenue for our counties and cities over not long enough of a period of time. So we want to continue working on that. Part of the General Assembly's response was we'll work on that and before you hit zero. Which, you know, that's never a guarantee, and many of those individuals will likely not be here when that hits zero. So we know we need to continue to work on that issue with those and representatives from the counties and cities. And the great thing is that the representatives from those counties and cities, Judge Summers has been great. I mean, we have very, very active and knowledgeable members who have been in the room. You were great in that meeting. We had some really good city representatives too who were with us in some meetings, and so hopefully everyone stays very involved. I've read many of the recent news articles too of what's continuing to happen and been on some effects. So we'll continue to work on it because that will be devastating to those communities when it does hit zero.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
In our community, we have 62 bourbon warehouses, 62, to the tune of about 2.5 million barrels. Its revenue is it's almost 25% of our revenue stream. That is not like we were the largest community involved in it outside of Nelson and Marion, Woodford and Franklin. When it came to revenue versus population and extent. So it's just totally, the industry's never kept their agreement. You've seen in the past 14, 18, they started this in 22. So it will be a continuous effort moving forward.
Yeah, and it wasn't like we had a majority of cities impacted. But for instance, it was 60%, 70% of their budget. It impacted several of our cities, but definitely not a majority, but it was wrong. And we weren't going to leave them behind, and we knew that it impacted these counties. And so we were happy to be there with you on this.
But I do want to thank you all for your efforts, working with you, JD, and our lobbying team as well. It was a effort that's going to be sustained moving forward as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me know when we can get together. We were able to, some of those successes are when you stop a bill, right? So House Bill 50, for those on the city side, was stopping the partisan election requirement. I know the counties do have that, but on the city side, for us, we had some mayors that said, potholes have no party. And so we wanted to make sure that remained the same because we don't really deal with partisan issues at the city level. And so wanted to make sure that remained because on our city side, it would be devastating if we dealt with Hatch Act and some of those implications of party politics, or having to register as a Republican or Democrat, because it would them from being able to serve and we stopped also SJR 83, which was the Public Pension Administration Advisory Committee bill from our joint resolution from passing. And that was a resolution that was going to Also require CERS from being in a study to combine the, look at the retirement system again, along with all state and teachers. So that would have taken us back from the CERS separation. And also we opposed the occupational tax credit, which was House Bill 215. So we had some good successes on stopping some legislation, but we, there were good successes as well. So now in this book, very detailed look at everything that passed this session that impacts local governments. So if you end up needing more in-depth detail, if you end up needing more in-depth detail on every single bill that passed is in this book for you, every single bill that impacts. Does anyone have any other questions?
Are there other questions?
I forgot to mention one more.
Yes.
DOR has a task force that it's, those last minute great amendments that pass. We noticed in the budget bill, there was an amendment that all of you will be interested in this, that was added for the transient room tax to study the centralized collection of that revenue at the state level. And so DOR is supposed to study that. So we are definitely going to monitor that. They're supposed to provide their report at the end of the year. That is something that we have always opposed, is the centralized collection of local taxes at the state level. The complaint from Airbnb and VRBO is that they cannot collect tax. However, for some reason, Expedia and Travelocity are able to pay the tax. So they can't do it though. So just a heads up.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. For those of you that didn't get to lobby this short session, you don't know how lucky you are. I have been lobbying probably 25, 30 years. It was a nasty, tough session. It was a very hard session. A lot came out of a short session. One thing you may want to take a look at, and I don't have the bill number, but there was a banning of gray machines. Those are skilled gaming machines. I had no idea the number I have in my county. They will be outlawed June 29th. But there are a lot of machines sitting beside these gray machines. So I'm asking for legal to give me an interpretation of what constitutes a gray machine and what constitutes a kid playing on his iPad, for lack of a better word. So that's one I think all of us will be dealing with. As I say, I had, I think, 10 locations carrying these machines in my county. Had no idea when I started looking at it. So that and solar power for you out in the county areas. It was House Bill 4, I think I'm correct. You may want to take a look at that. It's a solar powered bill that will impact us. With that, we'll move to the March financial statements. So there's the Director of Finance, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. KIPDA is about 75% through the fiscal year, and we are still trying to spend down our surplus. As far as our summary of elements, we have no concerns there, and our agency-wide line. There's no issues there either. And our balance sheet, we are in a sound financial position.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve as submitted? I have a motion. Do I have a second? Have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We thank you. Next item is Transportation Policy Committee. Andy.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. The first agenda item I have today is to report on the TPC meeting, Transportation Policy Committee meeting. They met in this room at 12:30 this afternoon, as we typically do. A couple of highlights. I'll highlight a couple of things, and then there's actually subsequent agenda items to this one in the board meeting, so I won't harp on them. One of the items was the shift process, the KYPC shift process. We had 49 projects approved for sponsorship there, more on that in a minute. We also had approved the Unified Planning Work Program. Frida just spoke about the agency-wide budget. This is in essence the NPO budget. It outlines what we do as a metropolitan planning organization at KIPDA. One of the things we have going on, and I know it's hitting everybody, is administration of transportation projects and delays in transportation projects and inflation in transportation projects and all sorts of things in transportation projects. So in the two states that we deal in an NPO, we have two different rules. We have the Indiana rules, which are very strict. You can't spend, if you can't take a penny forward into next year that you have this year. In Kentucky, we have a tremendous carryover balance. Neither one is perfect. Neither one is good, frankly. Somewhere in between would be nice. But nonetheless, we work at an NPO in two different rule books. And so there's been a lot of moving parts here late in the year. So Chris Nicholas provided the TPC with what our plan of attack is, which included some contingency plans based on some projects over in the town of Clarksville that were unawardable because bids are coming in like twice, 2/3 high or twice what the estimate was by their engineers. We announced that there'd be some money available for NPO jurisdictions to do transportation planning studies, about $250,000. That money is going to be passed through KIPDA NPO through these agencies to do transportation planning studies. We've done that in the past. We're going to do that again this year. And then we also lined out the upcoming amendment schedule to our long range plan and to our transportation improvement program. We'll be adopting that next month. And we're going to jump right into the amendments business as we always do. We're actually going to have an amendment the same day we do adopt it. So we're going to have amendment 1 next month, followed by amendment 2 in June, followed by amendment 3 in July. So never a dull moment. That's all I have on my report. Again, I'll be going into a little more depth in the next few agenda items. But
Are there any questions? This will require a motion. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next item, Unified Planning Work Program, Andy.
Yes, sir. There is a bit of a PowerPoint. I borrowed it from my TPC presentation, but the TPC bylaws say that what's known as the NPO's Unified Planning Work Program must be approved not only by the TPC, but also by the KIPDA Board of Directors. So here we are. It was approved, by the way, by the TPC about 30 minutes ago. Well, next slide, please. Okay. Again, this document, this UPWP as we call it, it basically showcases all of our efforts in the upcoming fiscal year, including the efforts that we do as NPO staff and the money that we pass through our agency in the form of contracts, various contracts. Oh, it does work. All right. Again, describes what we do, how much it'll cost, where the money comes from. It includes our primary work we do as an NPO. It also includes our rideshare program. Ms. Elizabeth Bowling-Schiller, she's often in front of you all. She administers our rideshare program. It includes the programs and data projects, more on that from Jeremy here in a minute on one of those, and also the planning studies, some of which are directly passed through to agencies in the world. Here's our schedule. It essentially says the draft was presented in February. The final version was presented today. I will be submitting these officially to the two state DOTs, that is NDOT and the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, as soon as tomorrow, but certainly by April 30th. And then that will firmly put us right in the middle of our contract season, which is always really fun for all the different contracts we have in our two states. Some highlights from that, and again, if you're in TPC, I apologize for the redundant presentation here. We did receive some comments from the Federal Highway Administration on several things, but none of which were major. Label your appendices. So we labeled our appendices. That's one of them. Our Kentucky money, very importantly, it stays steady year over year. We would have lost some money if not for KYPC's formula that says that you can't get less money one year than you got last year. That was good. We would have got less money this year if because our urbanized area has contracted. The Census Bureau has changed their rules, and so it's contracted. And so far less land area, 16% less land area is in the Louisville urbanized area, and therefore only coincidentally is the same amount of population in the 2020 census urbanized area as in 2010. So that would have resulted in a decrease in Kentucky, but thankfully we keep our money steady year over year. In Indiana, actually, our money did increase a little bit, so that's interesting. But still, we get quite a bit more money from Kentucky than we do in Indiana. The work program this upcoming year includes our State Streets and Roads for All grant. You should be expecting invoices from us real soon. We're gonna get that RFQ out really soon. So to get that, again, as a reminder, that's the regional safety grant that most every agency in this room is participating in. We also have we have to identify money for the feds, that money that goes toward complete streets planning, safety for bicyclists and pedestrians primarily. We will be amending it later in the year, carry over, we can carry over in Indiana. I won't harp on this too much. It's just the main budget document showing that we have about $5 million overall budget. A lot of that's passed through, but real importantly, a lot of that money must be matched by KIPDA for some of these federal dollars. The NPO takes a lot of the local dues match, to be clear. And so this is the document that's in the UPWP every year. Again, this work program was approved by the TPC. And again, we're here seeking everybody's approval for our report.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, this will require action. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We thank you. Continuing on with the Andy Show, the 24 KYTC shift update.
So again, this is a bit of a redundant presentation for those of you in TPC. I will supplement that with some information that happened in the RTC meeting next door. Again, this is about the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet's SHIFT process. SHIFT stands for Strategic Highway Investment Formula for Tomorrow. This is their process of taking a giant universe of projects, narrowing them down into a smaller number of projects. They get scored through their scoring methods so that they can prioritize their projects ultimately in the enacted highway plan that comes out from the General Assembly next year. Here we go. Why is it data driven? Because it takes these facets into account. Okay, these are the traditional ones that they've always taken into account. And then starting with this shift, they also now, thankfully, speaking from an urban perspective, take bicycle and pedestrian improvements into account. In other words, you get points for being a bike ped project where you didn't used to. And there's also a resilience factor in there. So I think that relies on like how critical a route would be if that route was closed. They've got an assessment of how important that route is. So, I'll pick an example. I-71 Oldham County. When I-71 is closed, that is very critical because all hell breaks loose, right? So that road would get improvements on that road would score max points on resilience, for example. All right, so I won't go too far into this, but we're in the process of sponsoring the projects. Okay, so the RTC sponsored the ads projects, the TPC sponsors the MPOs projects in the urban counties. These projects get scored, so they go into the black box. Projects that don't get sponsored, they miss the cut, and they will not be in the highway plan next year. They won't be in the recommended highway plan by KYTC. Here we are. We're early on in this process. April 27th, we're getting approval from our two boards here. Later this summer, we'll have to boost the projects. Those of you who've been around a while, boosting is where the local priorities are emphasized. Again, these projects that get sponsored go into a black box. I say black box, a scoring system. What comes out is a score for each project. Then we can boost them. KYTC has a number of boosts. The KIPDA ad and NPO have a number of boosts that say, hey, we really like this project. Mine scored low, we want to boost it up. Or this project scored high, we want to make sure nobody passes it up. We want to boost it even higher because we love this project so much. That's this summer, okay? And then it ends in a highway plan in the fall from KYTC and then enacted next spring by the General Assembly. We get allocated a number of projects. I'll skip that and I'll show the next slide but it's not a deep cut. That's what I mentioned earlier here. I think the next slide, here we go. So KIPDA ad is in the middle. KIPDA ad gets 20 sponsorships. You see in the middle table there. So KIPDA ad, that means Henry, Trimble, Spencer, and Shelby counties. There's 20 projects that can be sponsored by the KIPDA area development district. On the right-hand side, you'll see Louisville. So the MPO is called Louisville in this case. We have our hands full of sponsoring up to 49 projects, which is way more than anybody else in the state. Perhaps not enough, but that's debatable. On the left-hand side, you see the highway districts, okay? So in this case, everybody in this room feels in District 5, okay, that their District 5 is the KIPDA region plus Franklin County. So 67 projects minus those that they sponsored in Franklin County are the projects that District 5 will sponsor. When they sponsor one, it makes 0 cents for us to sponsor one. All you gotta do is get in the game, okay? They sponsor it, good. We'll move on to our next priority, okay? That's real important. Boosting, on the other hand, we should boost the same ones they do because it boosts it even higher. On the MPO side, we had a working group meeting last week where we sponsored projects, but we didn't have KYTC's projects at that time. We do now. We got those late last week or middle of last week. So we spent the end of the week getting together a list. And that was a list that was presented to the TPC earlier this afternoon. Here's where we were on the 3 MPO counties. KYTC was going to sponsor 7, 30, and 7 respectively in Bullitt, Jefferson, and Oldham counties. The KIPDA MPO, we proposed, and they took the technical committee's recommendation to sponsor 11 projects in Bullitt County, 30 in Jefferson, 8 in Oldham. Okay, and so at the RTC meeting that ended just a few minutes ago in the room next door, there were 5 additional projects sponsored in each county, is my understanding. So 5 projects for Shelby, Spencer, Trimble, and Henry counties. That's on top of the projects that were sponsored by KYTC, which were numerous in each county as well. So that's the worksheet. We don't need to go into that detail. I gave these highlights. I'll give them again. So in Bullitt County, there were 18 total projects sponsored. Heavy emphasis on I-65 and also heavy emphasis on Kentucky 44. Both of those are good to see. And I think the 2 gentlemen sitting in front of me are like to see those Kentucky 44 projects sponsored. In Jefferson County, KYTC sponsored numerous interstate improvement projects, some of our bottlenecks we see in our region. That's good to see. The sponsorships that were presented by the technical committee, KIPDA technical committee, and approved by TPC within Jefferson County, for the most part, were off of the interstates, right? Those are the arterial roads that may be priorities of little metros, of J-towns of the world, St. Matthews of the world, et cetera. Oldham County, we had 3 projects on I-71, which would, if seen through to completion, would be 6-lane interstate I-71 from Crestwood, where the current project will end, all the way out into Henry County. And I believe there's other projects on I-71 sponsored in the other county. And otherwise, it was projects all over the map in Oldham County. That's all I have. Again, this was meant to be informational. So that's your chip process. You should hear from myself and Randall. Well, you won't hear from Randall this summer, but this summer you'll hear from me and probably somebody else who ever does Randall's job in the future. He's retiring. He's not about the boosting process. So that concludes that report.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. And glad to hear those 5 projects and Shelby, Henry, Trumpet being put in there. No action is required. We'll move on to Regional Transportation Council, Randall.
Kind of leads with my segue. Good afternoon, board. The KIPDA Regional Transportation Council met here at 1 o'clock. We reviewed and approved the minutes from March 24th, May 26th, and January 26th. We had a public comment period. We had our county transportation updates in Henry, Shelby, Spencer, and Trimble counties. We sponsored 20 projects for the KIPDA ad that Andy just mentioned. We took 5 from each county. Judge Ogburn made a motion to approve the 20 sponsorships with additional of the KYTC District 5 sponsorship, and then was taken by Scott Bates. And I wanted to tell you, 146 project that I've been working on for over 20 years. It's finally starting, Judge Bates is finally starting to get moved dirt on. And good to see that project moving forward with the first segment of that. Judge Ison, Kentucky 53 project was another one we worked on for a long time, for over 20 years. It now 2 lanes on both sides, grass median, and then now multi-use path. So we need to continue to fight for these projects and go through the shift process and speak to the legislators on those. So also, I'm sending out a list to the Regional Transportation Committee on the membership list. Being glad to update that. Andy talked about our Safe Streets for All grant for the region. And then also updates on the KIPDA ad bike and pedestrian inventory. Our next meeting will probably be in June, and also now that meeting, notice to RTC. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Action is requested on this. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion. Do I have a second? Have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
And that'll be my last RTC meeting.
KIPDA Regional Traffic Data Service Contract, please present, sir.
Good afternoon, board. I just have a couple of bullet points.
This item can be found on page 37 in your board packet.
So we just recently advertised an RFP for, we're looking for a new traffic data service vendor. So that was advertised back in March 24th. Previously, we had went with Streetlight. We went into contract with them in 2019 and then had several extensions. The most recent goes out and expires May 8th. So from that RFP, we had 8 vendor responses and went through and looked at all those and scored and ranked them. The traffic data service that we're looking for utilizes cell phone location-based services, connected vehicle technology, things like that. And what we do with that data is we work with schools or local governments. We just recently had a request from Mount Washington looking at traffic counts. So this data is very important. Let's see, can you scroll down? I don't think this sheet's in the packet, but there's one that costs. So from that RFP, we would like to stay with Streetlight as we have been working with them, and their product is very useful. We use it not quite daily, but heavily, and it comes in waves like the request that we get in. We'd like to go with a 1-year contract for them through May 1st, 2024. And I think in the packet, there's a cost breakdown for the federal match and the KIPDA match. So that's for $130,000, 8% federal, 20% KIPDA match, and action is requested for this item.
Are there any questions? I do encourage you all to let your citizens know this is not putting street lights throughout the county. It has already come to me. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Do I have a motion?
We're motioning for streetlights?
Yes.
That was a joke.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next item, update on magisterial redistricting. Zach.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is just some information on what we've been doing out in the counties and what's coming up ahead. As you know, the reapportionment has come upon us. It's been delayed for quite a while. And in the recent couple of weeks, I've been out to all your counties and met with the county clerks. And we built, my staff has built a great app that we've taken with us where we can overlay your magisterial boundaries with the current census data and see which ones fall outside the new tolerance of 5% difference between each one to, we can then just select each census block individually and move them, which we did with your county clerks. This is just a preliminary exercise to kind of give your committees that you should be appointing in May something to look at. This is just the first stab at it. In some cases, we really didn't need to change anything, like Trimble County, when I met with Tina, that was real easy. I mean, your population in those magisterial districts has remained about the same. Others were a little bit more involved. This week, we'll be sending out the stabs that we took as form in maps and apps that we'll send out to you guys for your committee. And when you do form your committees, I'll be happy to come out with this application and sit there with you. I think it would save a lot of time and back and forth if we did things this way. It's hosted online on our account with Esri. So we can just sit there, and as long as we have Wi-Fi or some type of internet, we can do it on the fly with your committee and maybe get the approval done relatively quickly. Let's see, but there's actually gonna be, this meeting fell just a few days too early because there's an ad meeting on Monday morning with all the GIS staff to kind of review what needs to be done and have different procedures that people use. And looking at their items on their agenda, it looks like we've already covered a considerable amount with this exercise that we've done over the past 2 weeks. So it should be pretty straightforward from here on out. And it just depends on what your committees decide. So I've been told that once you appoint a committee, you've got 60 days to get it approved and sent to the Secretary of State. So that's our goal. And then there were some questions, and some of them about precincts. The precincts may change in some instances as the magisterial boundaries change, and then school boards also. I think what else? That's about it. You guys have any questions?
If you need any sample language for the advertisement for forming your committee, just let us know. We can share that. We've shared it with Shelby County. So if you want me that, we can share it with you all.
And just as a point of reference, the county clerk sits on this committee, but is not a voting member of the committee. So I am, you're putting your committees together, be thinking about what you've got. It does not require, if I'm correct on the KRS, that it be a mixture of Republican, Democrat. It can be all Republican, all Democrat. It used to be a balance there, and that has been taken out of the KRS. So, are there any other questions on this? None. Thank you, Zach. Next item, Regional Planning Council, Ryan.
I just have a brief report today on our quarterly regional planning council, which convened on April 11th. As usual, we gave some updates on some of the work that we're doing in our area development district, including administration of grant and loan funds for the Cleaner Water Grant Program, state revolving loan fund, ARPA, CDBG, and kind of going along with that, I'm going to give a really quick plug for a new project that I'll be working on that is in tandem with the state's Energy and Environment Cabinet. I'm going to be putting together a stakeholder list to meet on September 7th. We're going to talk about improvements that can be made with regard to resiliency in the energy sector. So I've already started putting this list together, but if anybody knows of anybody in your communities who might be a good fit for the stakeholder group, feel free to talk to me after the meeting or follow up with me later via email or give me a call. As our guest speaker, we heard from Nicole Conkle from the state's Kentucky Heritage Council and the State Historic Preservation Office. Her office is one that we work with pretty often here at KIPDA in our division for environmental reviews on grant and loan funded projects. She gave a brief overview of the historical review process that goes into trying to conserve Kentucky's historical resources and balance that with also developing our communities. So that was an interesting presentation from her. Next meeting will be July 11th, and I hope to have a guest speaker from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to speak kind of along the same lines, talking about the environmental review process that goes into looking at these publicly funded projects that we administer funds for here. So that concludes my report.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, this does require action. Do I have a motion to approve as presented? I have a motion. Oh, let's have a motion. Oh, I have a motion. Got to have a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you. Next item, Regional Water Management Council.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Board. The KIPDA Regional Water Management Council met here in the Burke Room on Tuesday, April 11th from 1:30 to 3 p.m. Lakeman, compliance specialist with the Kentucky Rural Water Association, joined us is one of our guest speakers. Ms. Langdon provided the council with an update on the newly proposed rule for PFAS forever chemicals in drinking water and consumer confidence report rule changes. The new rule should be finalized by the end of 2023, and then systems will have 3 years to comply from this date. It's published, excuse me, in its final form in the Federal Register. And then Core Main Water and Sewer Products and Solutions also presented at the council, and they gave an overview of their products and capabilities to serve our region's water and sewer utilities. They provided information about their materials and how they are working to decrease the wait time on some large infrastructure projects for our communities. And 2 new projects were approved in the meeting: the Clearview Farm Water Lane, excuse me, Lane Water Main Extension for the local water company, and the California Neighborhood Odor Control Improvements Project for local MSP. And both were received in the council approval. The Cleaner Water Program project and state revolving fund loan projects were also discussed, and the council heard county updates from each county in our KIPDA region. The next KIPDA Regional Water Management Council will be held here Tuesday, July 11th at 1:30 p.m. And this concludes Justin Finland's report.
Thank you. Is there any questions?
Judge,
Questions, sir?
yeah, I was on the Zoom with that, the meeting with the Forever Chemicals,
Mhm.
and I mean, that's something that scares me to death. I mean, when you can trace something to parts per trillion and then have an effect or make a rule that everyone must follow. I know, the nice lady, I think from the League of Cities, that will point you out, but you mentioned about the Senator Higdon is my senator, the shitty bill that you mentioned. Anyway, but like spreading the municipal sludge. How do we know that doesn't have those forever chemicals to a small degree in them? And they did it in the state of Maine, and they like, you can't have cattle on that farm, you can't produce grain on that farm, can't do anything on that farm. So, I mean, is this all gonna blow up one day and then we'll be no way to recover from it because it's parts per trillion? You know, am I worried about something that's not going to materialize or what?
I honestly cannot answer that.
Yeah.
I do not know. Does anybody weigh in on that information?
I mean, I hope I'm off track, but I mean, that's what I see. It's kind of like our water companies are going to have to expend all this money and they'll just pass it on to our customers. I mean, they got to pass it along.
Exactly.
And then when they start testing these package plants or, you know, what comes out of a sewer plant, I mean, I guess, is it tested now for these forever chemicals or not?
It is, I believe it is.
Yeah.
I think it's a lower or higher standard
Right.
than what it was.
But, you know, some things are unachievable. There's, you know, we don't want anything unsafe, but when things are unattainable, are we focusing the attention at the wrong place? I don't know. But I kind of walked away from that with, you know, these ideas and concerns. Just wanted to pass them on.
Judge, thank you for your comments and they're very good ones. And I can assure you, owning property in Maine, they can come up with some really wild stuff in Maine. Thank you very much. Let's see, we need a vote to approve. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item is a 2024 water and wastewater contract. Please continue.
I am asking for approval to execute a contract with KIA, the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority, for fiscal year 2024 water and wastewater management and WRIS contract. This is the amount of $61,000, and this is this will fund Justin Carter coming out to your all's community and kind of ranking your all's projects and working with your all's utility company.
Are there any questions? Do I have a motion to approve the contract? I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. I got a question. Yes, sir.
When do the next round of funding for the Clean Water Act, when does that come in, the third round?
I have not heard anything.
There isn't a
Have
date
you?
that's been announced yet. I'd say we'll probably hear some more information later this summer.
Next item, Division of Social Services Business Street.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just a couple of things today. One is we are requesting amendments to our C2, for a couple of our C2 contracts, which are our home delivered meals. Fortunately, we were able to feed more people, so we need to increase that funding a little bit. Looking to increase the Louisville Metro Senior Nutrition Program contract with an additional $210,000 in funding, and the funding for master funds that prepare those meetings for $250,000. The funding primarily is going to come from ARPA and the expanded senior meal program funding available.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. The next thing we're requesting, authorization to extend the procurement period for 1 year for our Title VII Ombudsman, Title VII Elder Abuse and State Long-Term Care Ombudsman programs. The state is making some changes for the programs and added into the assisted living facilities. Those regulations have not yet been finalized, so it makes it a little hard to write an RFP. So we are requesting authorization to extend that for a 1 year period. Any questions?
Is there a question? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve as submitted? I have a motion. Do I have a second? Have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Gosh, you guys are making it easy on me today. The last thing is we're requesting authorization to enter a vendor contract up to $70,000 for WellSky or SAMS, which is Social Assistant Management System. It's what the Social Services Department uses to track all of our visits and information. And this will be an annually reoccurring contract. It is a state mandated program that we have to use. So we're asking authorization for KIPDA to sign that vendor contract.
Is there a price on that contract?
It's up to 70,000, so I believe it's 63,000. I've left a little bit of room in there because it is still new, so we keep finding that we need to go back on occasion and ask for some additional platforms. So we're getting there, so I don't think there'll be too much more.
There are other questions? Do I have a motion to approve as submitted? I have a motion. Is there a second? Have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is the PACE program. Paul.
Good afternoon. I'll take a walk up here. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Sotinsky. I am the Chief of Community Healthcare for Volunteers of American National Services. I appreciate the time today to give you an update on a program that's coming to Jefferson County. We estimate around July 1st. It's a program of all-inclusive care for the elderly. Its acronym is PACE. It is a program for seniors over the age of 55 who are dual eligible. They're Medicare and Medicaid eligible. They have to be nursing home eligible and live in this catchment area, which in this case will be Jefferson County for our program. This is a program that's been around for about 50 years. It's now coming to Kentucky, will be the third program in the state when we open July 1st. It is an alternative to nursing home care. So individuals who are, as I said, nursing home eligible will have the opportunity to choose the program, and then we will provide services to them in their homes. Because it's a Medicare and Medicaid integrated program, we are responsible for all of the services that they would otherwise obtain through their Medicare card and through Medicaid benefits. So that includes hospitalizations, that includes if they need a nursing home, that includes home care, home delivered meals, all of their transportation. We are a Part D Medicare provider, so they will also receive their medications through us.
And then we have a team that coordinates the care. So there's a physician or a nurse practitioner, primary care provider, a nurse, a social worker, occupational therapist, physical therapist, dietitian, recreational therapist, somebody from home care, somebody from transportation, and then somebody from personal care. That team assesses the patient, builds a care plan with input from, we call them participants, the people who enroll, and their family members. This is a day center based program. So we have constructed a day center in Friendship House, which is in downtown Louisville. It's part of a campus that includes 2 affordable housing properties and a nursing facility. They'll come into the day center, they're able to see their physician and nurse and social worker. If they need rehab, they'll be able to have rehab. We'll provide them with a meal, they'll have activities. And then if they have their medications updated, they'll be able to take their medications home with the driver who will pick them back up at our day center and take them back home. Services are also provided in their homes. So we'll send personal care workers or certified nursing assistants out. The nurses may be able to go in and do assessments. Therapists can also provide those services in home. Sometimes primary care also goes out. As I said, this program has been around the country for about 50 years. The Commonwealth has taken its time to bring the program forward, but there's a commitment from the cabinet. It should be in every county, eventually in the Commonwealth. Sometime over the next couple of years, as I said, we'll be the 3rd program that will begin providing services on July 1st. To create the program, it's a 3-party agreement between CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the federal agency, the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and then us as the provider of the PACE services. The program was formed in a partnership between Volunteers of American National Services and Christian Care Communities, which is a provider of long-term care services around the state. So we've come together and we are providing these services first in Jefferson County. I can also tell you in a minute, we're going to be in another part of the state at the beginning of next year. I'll tell you a little bit about Volunteers of America in case you don't know that. So you're like wondering who are these guys that are coming in to provide these services. So VOA, Volunteers of America, has been around for more than 125 years. There are affiliates around the country that provide social services to individuals who seek their care. Provide a lot of services to veterans, provide services, behavioral health services, can sometimes provide other social service kinds of services in contract or by contract with counties and states. The VOA affiliate in this area is VOA Mid-States. So perhaps you've heard of them. They provide services across the state. They also provide services in Tennessee, West Virginia, and part of Indiana. We are a different part of Volunteers of America. We're national services. We have a large affordable housing footprint. We have services for in nursing homes and assisted living and independent living, and then our PACE programs. We have 3 PACE programs, one in North Carolina, one in Michigan, and one in Colorado. So we'll be bringing PACE from our experience in those other states to you here. The way the program works is we receive referrals from anybody who's interested. So it can be family members, can be physicians. It could be KIPDA itself as they're seeing people who might see this as a different option other than waivers or going to a nursing home. We can receive them from nursing homes. So we work towards getting people out of nursing homes if they're able to do that. And we can put supports around them. We can receive from other community-based organizations who have individuals that they're serving who might be better served by a program that provides all-inclusive care, assuming they have Medicare and Medicaid. We've been working on this for 18 months, trying to get it ready. There's a long regulatory process to get the Commonwealth and the Cabinet and CMS comfortable that we're ready to do this. Our first 2 employees are sitting right there. Chiquita Booker is our executive director. She'll be celebrating her first anniversary with us in July. She's been instrumental in preparing our day center and working with all of our contracts, hiring staff. And so Kentuckian, and we're thrilled to have her. You'll see her face more frequently as this is unfolding. And then our second employee is Jimmy Burkhead. He's our center director. He will be overseeing the day center at the Friendship House on 4th Street. We're opening a second day center at the beginning of the year in Jefferson County. I won't tell you the horror story of how we had to kind of work through the CMS federal process. But there'll be a second day center that will be opening right across from Marion Elizabeth Hospital on Bluegrass. So we're very excited to be bringing this program to Jefferson County. Again, it's been around the country for a long time, and are extremely excited about the fact that we're going to be able to bring more services for people who would otherwise be in a nursing home and can choose to live in the community. Although it's not necessarily impacting you and the jurisdiction you have, we're also opening another program in Northern Kentucky. So we're working on the building of a day center there. It is, I got to make sure I get all 8 of these counties now. Boone, Campbell, Kenton, Gallington, Owen, Carroll, Pendleton. I missed somebody. So there's 8 counties just on the other side of the Cincinnati, Ohio River there. We're working on a similar program. That will open, we believe, January 1st. We're in the midst of constructing that day center and getting through all of the hoops that we have to with the cabinet and with the federal government. So I can answer any questions. We'll be having another presentation to the advisory group and the staff on May 10th to give them more information, sort of at the level of, the ground level or in the weeds about how things work and how they can interface with us. I guess I'll give you a couple of statistics and then I'll let you ask any questions you have. PACE generally has around 90% of people living in the community. 10% have to go in nursing homes based on their cognition or medical needs. Our programs are about 95% in the states that we operate. And our satisfaction, the people who are in the program, because it's voluntary, they can disenroll at any time they want. Runs in the 95 to 96%. They're very satisfied with the services that the team provides and the way that the program works on their behalf. So we think that that's a ringing endorsement of the benefits that the program will bring, and as people enroll, what they'll experience.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Paul? No? Paul, thank you very much. Oh, we have a question. I'm sorry.
I need a telephone number, please. You have a phone number?
I do. 414-406-8843. And yes, it's true. You can probably tell from my accent, I'm not a native of Kentucky.
Clue what you're talking about, so we'd rather call you. It's about our team instead of a program or something.
To connect with as many community providers as possible, we want to be a complement to what the system is, not a distraction from what the system is.
Any other questions? Not. Paul, thank you for your presentation. Next item is the agency-wide budget revision, Madam Director.
In February, we presented our agency-wide mid-year budget, and it was approved, but we made some revisions this month, and so I wanted to present it again with those revisions. Where we increased our audit, we had some salaries that we reduced in social services, and then we did some increases in CED and transportation. So I wanted to present those to them today.
Do you have any question? This will require action. Do I have a motion to approve the budget revision?
And this can be found on page 39 if you're able.
Need a motion. Oh, I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item is Indiana legislation. Kevin is not here today. Jared will be making that presentation.
As the chairman mentioned, Kevin's at the Municipal Managers Conference, and he sent me his report. The 2023 legislative session began on January 9th and will end no later than Saturday, April 29th. The last 2 weeks have concentrated on conference committees working through differences in bill language between the House and Senate. During this period, a number of legislators have used unique procedural moves to resurrect language from unapproved bills and incorporate it into existing bills to gain passage. Key bills include House Bill 1016, police and fire merit systems. Under the current law, the local legislative body, be it a city or town council, passes an ordinance to establish a merit system. Ultimately, a merit board makes many decisions, including hiring, promotions, demotions, and disciplinary actions, including firing. This bill would automatically opt in those communities who don't currently have a merit system into having one if they meet certain population and employment parameters. These include a population over 20,000 and having at least 12 full-time police or fire employees. In addition to the automatic opt-in, there is an added hurdle to opt out. In order to opt out, both the legislative body and majority of the full-time public safety officers would have to opt out within the first 4 years of the merit system being established. This essentially flips the process. Even if the legislative body wants to keep the current system in place, they couldn't if the public safety group decides not to opt out. The ultimate say in how public safety is governed is now decided by the employees rather than those held accountable by voters. In addition to state statute procedure, it precludes all cities and towns from having the ability to adopt residency requirements. So the bill's now at the governor's desk. Without the residency requirements, important safety matters could be decided by individuals that do not live in the community or even the state. House Bill 1001, the budget. This week, the final revenue forecast for the budget was released. It shows that the state of Indiana will have an additional $1.5 billion to incorporate into the biennial budget, and will set the stage for the final budget negotiations among the governor, the House, and the Senate. In all three versions of the budget, there is funding for the READY program, which is currently called the Collaborative Communities Program, at $500 million. Additional public health funding at $225 million, and the residential housing revolving loan fund at $75 million. Currently, the budget reinstates the funding Indiana's roads for a stronger, safer tomorrow task force to look at long-term road funding challenges, especially in response to increased electric vehicle market penetration. House Bill 1167, live streaming and archiving meetings. This requires governing bodies of state and local agencies, excluding a state-supported college or university, to provide on a public accessible platform live transmission of public meetings and an archive of copies of the live transmissions with links to any meeting, agenda minutes, and any attachments to it. Provides that if a governing body does not have internet capability for live stream transmission of public meetings, that the governing body shall record the meeting and have it available within 90 days. Encroachment on an investigation, House Bill 1186. This provides that a person who knowingly or intentionally approaches within 25 feet of a law enforcement officer after the law enforcement officer has ordered the person to stop commits a Class C misdemeanor. Currently, that is 150 feet, so this is a significant reduction. House Bill 1499, residential property taxes. This bill contained in the House's proposals for granting property tax relief to residential taxpayers due to the rising property values last year, and includes changes to levy growth, the property tax caps, and homestead deductions. The Senate removed most of these provisions, leaving only a small adjustment to the over 65 circuit breaker, creating a great framework for a county option to provide relief, capping levy growth at this year's level for 2 additional years and increasing the homestead deduction for 2 years. House Bill 1005, residential TIF and taxes. This includes language to remove the restrictions on which communities can use residential TIF and removes the requirement that school boards approve residential TIF. And finally, Senate Bill 20, outdoor entertainment area. This includes allowing municipalities to create outdoor refreshment areas where alcohol can be purchased, carried out, and consumed for festivals, events, or as permanent amenity. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions? Move on to travel policy updates. Cheryl.
Good afternoon. See agenda item number 20 on page 41 for the travel policies I'll be presenting. The travel policy revisions are based on the most recent updates in the Kentucky administrative regulations, the Kentucky revised statutes, and the code of federal regulations. For convenience, the revisions and changes have been highlighted in your copy in yellow. The effect of the changes are minimal, so we'll just kind of go through a few of them here quickly. Under regional travel, Seymour, Indiana was added to the in-region travel list. And this is more for the transportation department, as Indiana District, the transportation department actually travels there quite regularly. For meals, note on that the gratuity is no more than 20% on your bill. Travel expense vouchers, receipts for expenses under $10 aren't required. And there are a few others in there you'll want to go through and look, but again, they're basically couldn't bring up to date with all the other rates and that. So with this revision, the KIPDA travel plan is up to date with all the regs. We haven't actually.
Are there any questions? No questions. I'll entertain a motion to approve. I have a motion. Do I have a second? A second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next item, for personnel report, Kelly.
Okay, thank you. We had 2 new hires in April. Tracy Leffler has been hired as our aging and disability resources in social services effective April 5th. He earned a bachelor's degree in hospitality management from the University of Kentucky and comes to KIPDA from Medicaid LLC, where he's a field rep. Nick Lawson, who's actually in here today. Nick, this is Nick over here. Here's our new transportation planner 1 in the division of transportation. He started Monday, the 24th. So this is his first board meeting. He earned a bachelor's degree in applied geography with a concentration in urban regional analysis from the University of Louisville. He comes to KIPDA from Loxton Survey, where he owned and operated his own land surveying business. Welcome, Nick. We had 1 promotion. Beth Mathis, who is currently our Connect team leader, has been promoted to Deputy Director of Social Services. That was effective April 3rd. Congratulations to Beth. We had 1 resignation. Abigail Roach resigned as ADRC Specialist 2, effective March 22nd. The following are our position vacancies in social services. We have an on-site connector, an ADRC Specialist 2, the home care case manager, and in transportation, we have the Transportation Improvement Program or TIP coordinator. These positions can be found on our website, KIPDA.org/careers. Currently, we have 81 full-time permanent, 1 part-time permanent, 3 full-time temporary, and 2 part-time temporary. That concludes my report. Action is requested.
Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, is there a motion to approve as submitted? I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next item, Medicaid funds recoupment update. This is something that's very dear to all of us.
Continuing the monthly updates on just where we stand with this Medicaid recoupment. As you remember, in November, the board authorized us to pursue legal action in order to recoup this funding, but we're also directed to try to work with cabinet to resolve this issue prior to filing that suit. We had, if you remember the last time I reported, we met January 30th with the cabinet attorney, go over this matter, and we kind of hit a dead spot during that period where we've been a bulk of information to the cabinet attorneys and we began to respond. The attorney representing KIPDA met with the general counsel for the Cabinet for Health and Family Services last week, and the cabinet's attorneys apologized. One of the attorneys on staff had to go on leave earlier than expected, and it kind of fell through the cracks during that period of time. They did say they were working to process some claims, and that appears to be the 63 claims that we received this week. They were smaller claims totaling $4,372, but it was the first time we've received any payment on these older claims since the beginning of January. So we were encouraged by that movement. The cabinet's attorney also told our attorney that he was going to be meeting with the Department of Medicaid Services staff on Monday of this week, and by the end of the week to provide us an outline on how they were going to go through processing the remainders of the claims. He said that he wanted to get the KIPDA matter behind him. Our attorney took this as a positive, and we were being cautiously optimistic as I await what kind of response we hear back from the cabinet. So again, I'll report back next month. It was a productive conversation, and our attorney was encouraged. So hopefully we can come to a resolution.
Very good. Next item is intergovernmental reviews. Jared.
All of these items have been sent out for local comment. No concerns have been stated. So these items can all be taken together, items A through H.
We won't need to take that.
We do, we'll need action to approve A through H.
Okay, is there any questions? Question? A motion. I have a motion. Do I have a second? We're moving along. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item, executive director's
All
report.
right, I'm the last one staying between you. I do want to recognize Joe Williams from the governor's office. Welcome, Joe. It's great seeing you. I know you've been all over the region, handing out dollars. We appreciate that. We always enjoy seeing you. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the group?
Good morning, real quick. I'm truly glad to see Senator McConnell doing well. He and I may argue with him. I wish he was better than him.
Appreciate that very much.
And also tell him too, that I was also born in Shelby County, so he owes me for that.
I have just a couple of items. One, if you all remember, the new board members obviously wouldn't, but our Cabinet for Health and Family Services contracts through the Department of Aging and Independent Living, these are the contracts that go towards us providing the aging services to the communities, the mills, the senior centers that Jessica and her team always report on. They require a training component for our board members. This is the diversity, equity, and inclusion training. If you remember last year, we had a speaker that came to our board meeting, presented at the board meeting in order to meet this requirement. As today shows, we have a very busy board meeting, so the cabinet did approve an authorized video. It's a YouTube video that is authorized to meet that training component. I will be sending that link out to you all as board members. And if you could simply respond to me that you received the training, that can help us meet that requirement for the contract. I always am uncomfortable asking our Indiana reps to do a training for programs that do not impact Indiana. So Indiana board members have to receive a waiver, so they do not have to complete that. But again, I'll be sending out that link. And if you could just respond to me and let me know that you'd received it. That's all that is required. So thank you for your all's cooperation on that. I appreciate it. We do have, and if you look on page 49 of your board packet, we have 3 travel items for consideration. The first is the Kentucky Association of District Directors. Myself and my 14 colleagues meet monthly in Frankfurt over 2 days. We meet with our state and federal partners, as well as discussing business as it relates to us as ad directors. So being in Louisville, that's very convenient for me. I can just commute back and forth, but for the people in the east and west, that requires overnight stays and a lot of travel. So 2 times a year in May, we go east, and in September, we go west. So this training request or this travel request is for me to go to our ad meeting May 17th and 19th in Camden, Kentucky. The second item is the NATO Board of Directors meeting. This is June 25th and 29th in Salt Lake City, Utah. I am one of the Southeastern region's representatives on the NATO Board of Directors. This is kind of our national governing body. So again, that is a travel item itself at the end of June. And then finally, the Southeast, make sure I get this correct. The Southeastern Association of Area Agencies on Aging hosts their training in August the 26th to 30th in Asheville, North Carolina. This is the premier training conference and networking opportunity for our aging staff. We have 4 staff members that have requested travel. Beth Mathis, who's the division's deputy director, Tricia Forbes, the division's finance and contracts manager, and Marianne Hall, our Kentucky caregiver coordinator, and Amanda Davis is our national family caregiver coordinator. Marianne and Amanda were selected by conference organizers to highlight KIPDA's work at the conference, leading a session entitled Meeting People Where They Are, Grandparents and Caregivers. So it's a good opportunity to demonstrate the good work that KIPDA is doing in our community. So again, these 3 travel items up for consideration. Approval is requested.
Do we have any question? I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
And then finally, this next month's meeting, May 10th, is the Transportation and Technical Coordinating Committee here in this room at noon. And then on May 25th, the Transportation Policy Committee will be in this room at 12:30. There's a mistake on there, but this will be in this room at 12:30, and then immediately following will be the Board of Directors meeting at 2 o'clock. And this completes my report.
Very good. Once again, I want to thank the governor's staff and Senator McConnell's staff for, I know as county judge, you all are so critical to us and working with me and other judges and the entire committee here. I thank both of you for all that you do, and our prayers to the senator. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion, a second, all in favor? Excuse.